But, so.
Awesome.
I knew somebody was going to do that. Of course, it's the guy in the tiger shirt. But, so.
It was going to be black.
Yeah, it's obvious. So I just wanted to welcome you. I don't know if it's your first panel or second panel, but at least we're all still sober for now. So.
No, you're not. I'm not
Sharing is caring. Okay. So again, just going to go introduce everybody right away. I'm Dave Sims. I will be your moderator, and I will not be one of those moderators who asks the questions and then answers it, because I know last year I was on a couple of panels where the guy actually asked the questions, and he said, "I'll answer my own question," and he talked for 45 minutes. That's not how we do things here. So we have Povey, and Gray, Rinehart, and we have Phillip down there, and I'm going to let everybody give a little intro for themselves. So we'll start with you and come back this way.
All right, I realize I'm very overdressed. I just came from a big war game we were running for DoD, so I didn't really have time to change. Phillip Pournelle, spent 26 years in the Navy. Along the way, they sent me to the postgraduate school of Monterey to get a degree in operations analysis and math. And the reason why I took the course, I didn't realize the math part, because in the catalog it said, war games. I could do that. I played all those games when I was a kid. After my last year in uniform in the Navy was a place called the OpsNet Assessment, where they predict the future security environment 20, 30 years in the future, and the main tool to do that was wargaming. And so now that I do that for, I do part of that as a living. I also helped finish my dad's last book in the Janissary series called Panelists, and I submitted the sequel to it, and I'm waiting for an offer I can't refuse.
Hey, the boss is reading it, but she did report to me that she had to set it aside for a higher priority item. She will get back to us when she can.
It happens.
Speaking of the boss, I'm referring to Tony Weisskopf at Maine Books. My name is Rinehart, and I am a contributing editor at Maine, and have had the privilege of working with Phillip on the Panelists finale and what will be Janissary's Rogue. I have every confidence that it will be in the catalog fairly soon. On my own, I thought about joining the military like Phillip did, like Sean did, but I joined the Air Force instead. But, hey, it worked for me. I was 20 years in the Air Force. I've been out for quite a while now, and as I say, I work for Bain on an editorial basis. I've written a few books of my own, and I'm also a singer-songwriter, so I have some music out, and now I'm getting into some other artistic endeavors that will probably never be banned, but possibly should be.
And I am Jennifer R. Povey, and as is not uncommon at RavenCon, I appear to be the token civilian on the panel, which is not the first time. I write science fiction and fantasy. I am also potentially personally affected by the current brand of book brand, and there are a lot of gay people in my books. I'm bisexual, and I write about queer people. So.
Is this the one that was
Yes.
up for the award?
Yes,
She
it is.
was
Yes,
up for
I was
the.
nominated for the Webster. I am a graceful loser. Strong competition. But yes, that book is the first book in a 5-book space opera series which is finished. So if you decide to pick it up, you will not end up waiting 3 years for the last book, or George R. R. Martin years for the last book.
I'll be dead before that one comes out.
George R. R. Martin will be dead before that one.
Oh yeah.
Not like us.
Exactly. All right, and I'm here. I write thrillers. I write horror. I write historical things and all sorts of things. And no, I'm not in the service, so you're not the only person. But
it has been said, being the only person who was not active duty or
yeah, exactly. But I also, you don't torture people with music. I do. So I'm in a writer's band, and we're terrible. But so thankfully we're on a break. But actually, the reason why I volunteered to moderate for this one, this thriller is about the American eugenics movement, and it happened to be in my town in Stanton, Virginia. I had the movement in my town when this book came out to actually ban it because why? Because it had true things in there. Because again, it's like holy shit, like wait a minute, would we actually influence Hitler directly? No, that's not good. And I had a bunch of people who can take their teeth out and like wearing diapers and trying to ban the thing. So I figured, let's fight. So eventually, logic prevailed. But I figured, I'm also a psychology teacher, professor, and so education and that is really close to my heart. So that's why I'm here for this one. But I really want to hear what these three fine people have to say about this. Come on. Okay, so I'm just going to go down and we're going to start randomly, and then honestly, with whoever wants to answer things, we're just going to go as freewheeling as we can. So if you have something cool to say, you go. And so we're going to start off with the icebreaker. Okay, why are those people who ban books assholes? And is there ever a good reason to ban a book? So let's just start going. Okay, on the card.
There is no good reason to totally ban a book. There may be a reason to keep certain books from out of the hands of very young children, if nothing else, and to spare them nightmares. But that is something that most of this should be child by child, not school by school. But there is no reason. I mean, I have read Mein Kampf, okay? There was no reason to ban a book. There may be a reason to put a warning on a book, right?
But playing off of that, what's the last book that has been banned? Or name a book that is currently banned.
Because
You want a
that's the
list?
key thing.
Yeah, I do.
Yes, we
Okay.
do,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
for society,
A book that cannot be obtained
that,
Oh, cannot
because
be?
it is banned.
yeah, because
Oh.
here's the key
Well,
thing.
that's- yeah.
For a community that prides itself on precision of language, we should be precise in our language about the difference between ban, as in you cannot obtain it, control, parental consent, and local school board. So let's be precise in our language.
Well, we're talking about in general. Like say for the horrible state of Florida, they have on their site over 10,000 books that are banned according to their language. So I'm going by.
So if I live in Florida, I cannot buy that book.
That's well. Let's not split hairs here.
No, we
No,
will
that's
split
what-
hair.
that's what a ban
Precision-
is.
No, I'm saying
precision of
by
language.
this is by the Florida government's language, their language. So you can pick it up with them. So their language is they're saying that's
Okay,
banned.
now I do, because my wife is a lawyer.
Yeah.
And reviews these things, so you need to read to me the text that actually says the word ban. I can easily see from it that it's restricted or not for general use in school libraries, things like that. So let's be precise in our language. That's all we're asking for.
I think most of what we're calling bans at this point are more like restrictions in that the book is being banned from a specific venue or a specific outlet.
So people are making a choice that this book will not be bought. They're making an economic choice.
No, that's not quite
That's
that.
not-
No, because especially when you go down to, like, so let's use Florida, because I just bumped into another writer in there, it's like had a t-shirt on, like I want to write a book that would be banned in Florida. Florida is the #1 state that has a list of banned books. It's on their it's on their site, it's on the thing. So, but okay. Well, I don't know. We're gonna have a yes.
It sounds like what we're talking about now is the difference between books that have been banned from schools as opposed to books that have been banned, you can't buy this.
Right.
I think a lot of books have been banned from schools, and it's stupid. I completely agree with you all on this, but I think we need to set that differentiator, yes, Solomon Rushdie was banned from Iran or Iraq or wherever it was.
Yep.
God, that's banned. But I think that's very different from banned from schools.
Okay.
It is. It's
We have
Well,
used the word banned incorrectly a lot because we used to talk about books being banned by the Catholic Church. Well, the intent was these are books that the Catholic Church doesn't recommend Catholics read. They stopped doing it because they realized the rest of us were using it as a reading list.
Oh.
Yeah, and the whole thing is, I mean, the name of this panel is banned books. So none of it, I didn't create this thing, so yeah, if we're here for an argument, the door's there.
Well,
But,
Ray and I were attracted to this panel specifically about the precision of language.
okay, well,
And we're not going out the door.
And you were the one who said people who want to ban books are assholes.
yeah.
So it seems like you're ready for an argument of
Oh,
satire.
well, I know.
And so let's have it.
Well, I didn't know we were gonna have an argument.
What
on the panel.
book has been banned?
The
Give me a title.
The wonderful thing about fandom is the ability to have spirited differences of opinion.
Yeah, okay, but
And
you're-
we don't
Because I'm looking
banish
right now at
opinions.
an article from the Central Florida Public Media. Florida Department of Education releases list of over 700 banned books. Then it quotes a list of over 700 books that were, quote, removed or discontinued from districts throughout the state. So the newspaper used the word banned, but the Florida Department of Education seemingly didn't. And the link that they give doesn't take me to a list. So please, what is the nature of the ban?
Well, I'm not here to educate on the nature of bans or the precision of language. I'm here to moderate the panel. You guys are here to answer the questions. So, outside of, let's go on here. So let's cantankerous issues. So outside of elementary schools, because again, as a teacher, again, I don't want different things in there, but who makes the decision to decide who's going to remove books or to restrict them? Okay, is there a purpose to actually to remove a book from a library? But what are the parameters?
I mean, in the case of school libraries, yes, it is appropriate not to have age-inappropriate material. What we have at question in a lot of cases is books that have been written as age-appropriate, published as age-appropriate, marketed as age-appropriate, that some family decides that because they think it is not age-appropriate, no child should have it. And they're not even talking about their child, they don't want their child to have it, they want nobody, and 90% of these books are, it has gay people in it, and I want my child not to know gay people exist. And that's a problem because we do, and we're there, and their classmate might have 2 moms or 2 dads, and the rest of the books that issue tend to be about things like race and accurate history. So a lot of this is white parents who want to shelter their children from any kind of diversity. And that's not a good reason. But it is a good reason, even in high schools, maybe not to have books in the school library that were not written for that age group or not appropriate for that age group. That, nobody, and you'll hear the book challenges, let's call it that to avoid another fight about the word ban, say this is pornography, and it's got, a kid's got 2 dads. And then they say, they turn it around and say, we're supporting pornography in school things. None of us want pornography in school libraries.
Yet the books that initiated much of the movement in Florida and other places were pornographic. Now, the question now becomes,
Which ones can you specifically name some?
Well, the text was pretty specific and pretty, they're
So
pretty vile.
It was explicit sex and
Yes.
it was unpleasant
Which titles
time.
there?
So I'm going to move past that. I'm going to ignore your question for a moment. The key
Okay.
is when we say written for appropriate audiences, etc. The question is who makes the determination, who makes the criterion. I think we can all agree that parents have certain parental rights regarding their children and the selection of books within their house. Now the question is, okay, beyond the house, what takes precedence? Who makes the criterion? As a conservative but with libertarian bent, I'm happy for these decisions to be made at the lowest levels possible. And certainly, as I think we've all agreed so far, that school libraries are probably not the place to be too permissive with studies. But the question criterion and who makes the decision is probably the school board. But once we get beyond that, now we're in the realm of, is the government saying which is in and out? Because the danger of that, of course, is the government says is permissive one day, And then
And then
someone
the
you don't
comes
like
in
comes
and-
in and changes it, so.
And the scale
So,
flips.
yeah, so the marketplace of ideas appears to be the mechanism, for these things to be addressed, particularly at the lowest level possible.
I was noticing another form of, it's not banning in the way you refer to banning, but removing books from shelves is happening at the military academies for DEI books. And that's appalling to me. Things that are labeled DEI would be taken off the shelves at the military
I'm not
academies.
familiar with them being, they've been removed from the curriculum in some cases, but I know
They were
they've been
removed
removed from the library.
from the
And by
national libraries.
DEI, they mean anything that talks about anyone other than straight white men.
Yeah.
And that's what they mean by.
Well, that's not true, because there are plenty of young ladies at the Air Force and all the other service academies right now as we speak, so let's.
We're talking about.
Well, do we want to talk about the precedence of sexual assault and harassment that those women
Yeah,
face?
and,
Let's
and
not.
they're dealing
Yeah,
with it.
we're not gonna, we're gonna.
We want to wander off topic,
We're gonna
yeah.
stay
Well,
on
I mean,
topic.
my
that's
point
purpose.
is that like, you can just say, hey, those women are there, but that doesn't mean that those women are properly represented, or that they're given historical weight.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're gonna stay back to the books here because we can go on and on about, again, anybody could read the articles about how women, people of color have been wiped clean from military websites,
Yes.
specifically Pentagon in recent months, but that's neither here nor there. So, but I'm looking for, as a school teacher, I've been involved in teaching for over 25 years. I've seen the horrors of book restrictions or book, segregation, whatever you want to call it. I've seen several parents come and say, listen, I don't want my kid reading this, so let's take it off the shelves, so let's get rid of it. And I've seen.
Did you? Did you do so?
Did you take it off the shelf?
Based
I'm
on
not a
that
librarian.
parent?
I'm a teacher.
Okay. Did
Yeah.
you refer them to the library?
Okay, can you, I should speak? Okay, so that's about a backwards Trump rally. So anyway, so as an educator, not a librarian, as an educator, I have known people who have come in, I've seen parents come in. I'm not a librarian, so let's not mince words. So if we're gonna get specific with language, let's focus. So parents coming in and say, listen, I don't want my kids to do this. I've heard from the librarians. I've worked with librarians who've said, this is happening. We've had librarians quit over the last, 10 years. Let's just, estimate here. Because so much pressure was done to take books off the shelves in middle schools, high schools, everything else, and that's been happening worldwide. And just for an example, we had, not with my books, but again, in my high school, down in Lexington, Virginia, where I used to work, we had a couple of parents come in and former teachers come in. They just decided to say, hey, let's take some books off your shelves. The Bluest Eye, Lee Morrison, we had a bunch of other ones. So it had, the ones I had on list from Pen America, which is where I got my information from. Freckleface by Julianne Moore. Hunger Games, that's really offensive, First Being Wallflower.
My question is, so these people have come in and taken books off shelves. Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I'm saying.
But, well, that's what you seem to say, and I'm trying to get
Is that what I'm saying?
clarification.
They've actually done a meta-analysis looking back into what has sparked some of these book removals, and they have found that it's often one disruptive parent or a small group of disruptive parents. It's not necessarily a school board decision,
Well,
and the
that's
schools on a
ultimately-
case-by-case basis are doing that, and so it seems to just line up quite well with what
Well, my question
this
is,
example is.
what's the process?
What is the process? Well, I've been through the process because I was actually put on the spot with this. I was named as part of the committee for this one school, for a high school. And we had one former teacher who was fired, and a couple other parents come in and they picked the Bluest Eye, they picked the Hunger Games, they picked some other books that were popular at the time, Divergent, and there's some classics like, say, I'm not sure about, I'm looking on here.
To Kill a Mockingbird could have been there. in
Well,
all
that
likelihood.
wasn't there this time, but it has been before. But again, I don't want to go through the rest of it. I don't want the exact of my thing. But what the process was is they talked to the board and they said, here, we want to go through the process of removing this. And they put through the whole rigmarole. And what I was part of was they were able to come in and say, can you please tell us about the book? And The people who came in never ever read the book. As we said, what's disruptive about this? What's bad about this book? They say, well, it's inappropriate, it's obscene, something. Can you point to a passage that's obscene? Not one of them could. So that's my experience with this, and that's what I've heard about it. And I've heard from educators. I'm friends with educators from around the country and outside the country, and people who've been involved in processes like this. And of course, we're not going to have a blanket statement that nobody's ever read these books. That would be ignorant. But a lot of people who are complaining about it want to make a name for herself. That one woman who came in, she wanted to be elected to school board or run for office. Once she found out that her argument fell apart, then it was out. But again, if you can't name specific books, and you can't name specific titles or specific passages, then you have no leg to stand on. So, but that
Out of curiosity, were these people successful
no,
in banning the books?
not in my school.
Restricting the books?
Not in my school.
In other schools, they have been.
Yeah,
There are
no.
studies if you want to go look them up.
Yeah, but like I said,
But they followed a process
Like, are you
to
following
get.
anecdotal evidence, or do you want broader scale evidence
Yeah.
nationwide?
Well, I'm trying again to get us back to what is the nature of what is going on.
the nature is
People are entitled to their opinions,
yeah.
Correct.
and they're entitled to express their opinions, and they're entitled to work through whatever processes are put in front of them. And if those processes fail, or those processes succeed, based on whoever's criteria, then
So,
that makes it incumbent upon, all it is doing is restricting from this particular audience, these particular things. It does not ban those things, it does not.
If the
But that's-
operational
that-
definition of ban is not going to be the way that you're defining it, all
Yeah,
have to do with
yeah,
what
we're,
you know.
they're splitting hairs with the word ban, and, okay, we're gonna get to everybody here. We're just gonna stay on topic, because obviously there's a split in.
You're arguing, you're not asking questions.
Exactly, so again, we're gonna stick to what we came for here, and why banning is a big thing, because again, at Penn America, look up the website if you don't look at it. And again, I did some heavy duty research. I'm a researcher for psychology, and I found this. It's pretty easy for me to find. It said over 10,000 books by Florida. Florida was number 1, Texas was number 2. Through the list of states, their use of ban. So you wanna fight Webster on that, that's great.
in
But-
most
yeah, go ahead.
cases,
Do you have
these
a
books
question?
are challenged, not banned.
Mhm.
Because they're challenged, and a lot of these lists include books that were not actually removed, but were challenged to be removed, whether the challenge is successful or not. Sorry to cut it.
Oh, no, you're
No,
fine.
I think that's a great point. That's
I'm
the
trying to
key.
get us off the language bit here.
Yeah, well, let's stay off the language here, because, yeah, let's go through here. But now, I mean, so let's go for something else. Now, how could we and should we as writers fight this, let's change the word here. It's an advantage to censorship, and to censorship of the books, what's on the shelves and what's not. We had a comment right here about parents saying what's inappropriate. Parent, if you don't like something, great. Don't let your kid read it. Have to think that, not make a decision for something else. But as writers, what responsibility do we have to battle this? I mean, again, forget having kids, forget anything else. What kind of responsibility do we have to battle any type of censorship overall?
I would say our first responsibility whenever anyone threatens to censor our work, and we have people in the current regime who want to put me in jail for writing pornography, and I have basically never actually written a full explicit sex scene. And I think our first responsibility, our very first responsibility, is that we do not comply in advance with those threatening to censor us. Our first responsibility is to write what we are going to write and not worry about, worry about marketing, worry about whether anyone is going to read your book, but do not worry, let censorship get between you and the story you want to tell. Do not comply in advance. Do not, and that goes most especially right now for queer writers of YA and middle grade fiction. But do not comply in advance is your first responsibility. It may be the only thing you can do as a writer. There may be other things you can do as a person. I'm going to split that off because I want to stay on topic. But yes, first responsibility, do not comply in advance. Do not let anyone tell you what you can and cannot write.
Except your editor.
That's a different, yeah, that's a different thing.
Editors
It's
are-
paid censorship.
Editors are evil, let's just face that, there is no nice.
Excuse me, I'm an
No,
editor as well.
that's my editor. I can say. You might not be,
I
but
cannot
she is.
survive without an editor, thank you.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, no.
Oh, no,
No,
editor-
no, my point being that, I don't, we are privileged to live in a place where censorship per se is really not something we need to fear.
Yet. If things go bad, it could be.
Can
They
he
are not
finish?
there yet.
Can he finish, please?
What we are, what we face are market forces. And I am with you 100% in terms of write the story that you want to write. Write the story that is on your heart to tell. And if your editor, and this, I tell people I edit, my name is not going on the front of your book. I am going to give you suggestions, ways in which I think you can make your story better. You can tell me to pound sand. You don't have to do anything that I tell you unless it's a style thing, and that's just copy editing, it's not story thing. But it's not my job to censor. And if I even tried, my boss would fire me on the spot. Because my job is to help the author tell the story the author wants to tell in the best possible way. And I think people would agree that's what a good editor should try to do. And so I'm with you. Self-censorship, that's a shame. And I'm not in favor of that either, obviously. But when we write the story that we want to tell, we have to be aware that that story may not have a market for one reason or another. And that's not up to us. We have to be true to ourselves and write what we feel the need to write, and then let the market decide.
I mean, I had an editor ask me to tone down the prayer in a book, and under the circumstances, it was perfectly understandable. I did it. There was a piece of information they had not given me. I'm not going to say anything more than that. But the editor did not ask me to make the character straight. She did not ask me to do that. And there's a difference between an editor doing their job and saying, hey, if you do this, you're going to turn off a segment of the audience. If you do this, you're going to, or if you do
But
this.
that could still be valuable feedback, and you can decide, I don't care about that segment of the audience. This is the story I want to tell, or I want to reach this other audience that is underserved, and this is the story that's going to reach them.
That's now going back to what is our key responsibility as writers? Write the story you want to tell, subject to editorial content. The publisher has as much of a risk of libel and other lawsuits as the writer does, first off. But after you tell that story and you have the editorial exchange, you also need to be straightforward about what your story is about. And if you have material that may be salacious, may not be appropriate for particular age groups there, be clear about it. Now, for those who are fine with that material or actually seeking that material, be straightforward with it. Those are the responsibilities of the writer. Tell your story, subject to editorial suggestion, but be straightforward about the contents of your work.
And here's the thing, what you're talking about, Philip, and I agree with you, is marketing your story so that you don't have somebody pick it up who's not going to like it. Now,
you also don't want to be picked up by someone, say parents or kids at a science fiction convention looking for a book to read, right? To pick up a book that may not be appropriate for them. Just be straightforward about your material, and they or their parents can decide, okay, this is appropriate for you or not. And even someone who's in their 20s may not necessarily want to read a particular style of book with a particular theme in it. Be straightforward about that. It's not just marketing, it's about being straightforward. It's like, you pick up a Coke. The copyright for Coke or other products is not for the producer. It's for the consumer. So that when you pick up something that says Coke on it, you know what the content is of it. Because if someone else makes a Coke-like product that looks like Coke, and you as the consumer pick it up, there's not only potential damage to the producer of the product, but more likely damage to you as the consumer. So same in terms of like when you produce a product, be straightforward about what it is and let people decide what is age appropriate. Then the decision for parents, school boards, etc., at the local level becomes appropriate.
Okay, well, this is going off that, and I just wanted to clarify, because again, difference of opinion is wonderful for this channel, because it's supposed to be a little spirited conversation here. But now I like what you're saying about consumer and marketing. That's fine. It's like, and again, some people, again, for some of the books I've read, some have trigger warnings, some other things, which I think are smart ideas for some people. But you're also saying about decision making. Who should make that decision? We talked about it a little bit before. I just wanted to consumer. But no, hold on. No, but it's not exactly when we're talking about banning or restriction or whatever else, whatever words you want to call. Who is it? I mean, you're saying consumer, but if it's a book for a teenager, is it a book for a school, a book for who should be the gatekeeper for that? And the way you're saying it, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. The last thing I want to do is do that. Is that who should make that final decision for that consumer?
As I said, the decision should be made as close to local level as possible, starting with the parents, but there can be community standards, school boards, etc. I don't particularly want the Ministry of Truth in the United States, overall, deciding which books go where, because once you set up institutions like that, they have a bad habit of, you like the restrictions they're doing today, you may not like the restrictions they do tomorrow. So as a libertarian, I'm interested in that decision being made at the local level, but unfettered for adults, right? But now we're talking about community standards, parental authority, etc.
Okay, so what I would say, if we are talking about young readers, the parents should definitely have a say. The other people that are incredibly useful for this are school librarians, because school librarians know books. I know a school librarian and he knows YA books and YA comics left, right and centre, and the school librarians and public librarians that handle children's collections should have a say, but their say should be in helping parents and kids avoid the books they don't want and find the books they do. Now, to use my own work as an example, all of my books are intended for adult readers. Most of them are perfectly readable by a typical 16 or 17-year-old. Any younger than that, and I suggest the parents read the book first. Because some of my books have some violence, they have some gore, not this one, but some of my urban fantasy gets a little intense in places, and I cannot make a decision for that child as to whether that child is ready for that material. The only person who can make that decision is somebody who knows that child, and that's the parents. And school librarians can also have a role because they can do the reading the book first too. A month and do that kind of gatekeeping, but that gatekeeping is for that child. Now, I would not suggest that any school library got my books, because they are not intended to be read by anyone under the age of 16, really, and in some cases 18. They are not written for that audience, and kids might come across vocabulary that's a little too much for them, or as I said, broad, it's a little too much for them, horror elements are a little too much for them, and they're not, I would not sell my book to a school librarian. I would not talk about my book. I might talk about a friend's YA book, but and that's probably another thing that's an author's responsibility. But yes, they do have to be people who help children pick the right books. But it should be that child, not that school of children. If something, I mean, you know, some of the stuff that's getting challenged is perfectly age appropriate in the mind of 90% of people. And if you don't want your kid reading about gay people because you mysteriously think that means they will grow up straight, I have news for you, it doesn't work that way. That's your problem. But if you don't want anyone's kids reading about gay people, you're the problem.
Okay, we're gonna get to, thank you for that. We're gonna get to some questions. We're at 8:30, 36. We're supposed to be out of here in 13 or so minutes. So yeah, I know we have a bunch of questions. You were waiting so patiently back there. So
Well, thank you. So were you. I'll try and make this as brief as possible. I happen to work in a public library, the Richmond Public Library nearby. We've been fortunate enough to not have people vociferously trying to get rid of books at this time. The Pamunkey Regional Library nearby in Hanover County has not been so lucky. I've been in one of the library board meetings where people did extremely large poster blow-ups of a graphic novel that was certainly meant for older teenagers or adults, and parading it around the room complete with people's anatomy showing photographs. It's a graphic novel. And they never bothered to mention that book would have been in the young adult graphic novel section, which is not near the children's section. And the children's section is for attracting children. They've got games, they've got plushies, colorful paintings, whatever. The adult section is much more quiet visually, and seldom the twain meet. And if a kid goes over to the young adults graphic novel section and gets something, the parent is there to decide. And having worked in a public library, if I saw a kid like pick up the Walking Dead graphic novel, I would turn just quickly as they're checking out, you sure you want, because this is considered for adults, because it's a parent's decision. There are so many people who are trying to, as you pointed out, Jennifer, thank you, no one should look at the thing that I don't like. And let's call it censorship if you want to mince words. But since we consider ourselves to be in a country where people have freedom of choice, then someone else shouldn't be able to decide for me.
Let's on that thread about freedom of choice.
Well,
Because if you
Okay, freedom of choice. No, I'm not interested in you. I'm not interested in you.
It's other people's money.
Okay, let her finish her, if you please don't interrupt her. Let her
Freedom
finish
of
her.
choice.
She should be asking a question.
Yes.
She's explaining her point.
What's the question?
Please finish.
I was making a comment about if you want to mince words when people are trying to tell me or someone else what they can or can't do. I would have thought that you would prefer no one do that to you.
But that's
Is that
kind of the
correct?
point. When you take public monies and put it to any purpose, you are telling someone what to do, right? If you don't pay your taxes, men with guns eventually show up.
Depends
So-
on who you are.
Well,
Let's just be honest.
well, other people will deal with, if you don't pay your taxes, men with guns show up, or the bank puts a lien on your house, etc. Or a bank puts their lien on the business, which has happened to the person you're referring to many times. The point being is, you are using force in the distribution of a product, in that case, the library. So I'm very happy that when public monies are involved in the decision of how the community's services are run, that community has a say in how it operates. I understand that some people do stupid things and they get all up in arms or misrepresent information to the general public. Happens all the time. I live in Fairfax County. There's a lot of misrepresentation on my local school board. So, but when you are using force, which is the use of taxpayer dollars for the operation of a library or other public facilities and the books therein, then the local folks have a say in that.
Let me.
Okay,
Yeah,
hold on.
my
Let's-
question is, how do
Go
we,
ahead, Jeff.
how do
And
we
then we're gonna
fight
get
for
to-
our First Amendment rights to put those books in there? Because I personally would have really benefited from LGBT coming of age stories in my library when I was in middle and high school. I want to put those books in schools for those kids that are like me, that really would have benefited from that.
Then go to the school
How do I
boards.
do that?
Go to the
Well,
school boards,
yes.
because that's the thing. It's not a First Amendment right to have the book there. It is a First Amendment right that the government not interfere with
In
your
the
ability
production
to
of
publish, to produce it.
That,
But
Can
they're
I-
coming in the way of the ability for those books to be available.
You can still
like-
get them on Amazon.
Can I please
Okay, shh. Okay, go ahead,
make my
Jennifer.
point?
Go ahead.
I'm going to say this. Most of this book challenging is coming from certain groups, and at the heart of it, there are 14 individual people that are behind these challenges. That's fewer people than are sitting in this room. It is not, for the most part, there are exceptions, especially in big rural places where people tend to be more insular, but in the most cases, it is not the local community posing these challenges. It's one parent or two parents, and they're associated with these national groups whose goal is to make sure that no children have access to the books you want, and ultimately no adults have access to those books either. It's not the local community doing this. Most people do not want these books in.
This gentleman's been waiting forever here.
That's all.
Okay, you sure? Okay, no, but that's a great point, because again, Moms for Liberty, local terrorist group. Go ahead.
And that's what I actually wanted to say earlier. I'm a public librarian as well in rural West Virginia. You know, my library does have a procedure for accepting a book challenge and reviewing it. So far, I've not had to go through this process, but one of my colleagues, also in West Virginia, frequently has to deal with this, and that's what he has found as well. It is often not so much locals who are starting this, but people who knows where, who are just a few people who have some influence, who will then, for lack of a better phrase, stir the pot.
Educated.
That's the way it is with a lot of things. You know, boycotts on products and things like that usually start with one or two people,
Yes, sir.
and then proceed on to get either to get traction or not to get traction.
Okay,
When
outside
it comes to your
educators,
library,
why not?
you
This is
have
an outside
people who are
educator.
in charge of purchasing books, and perhaps they are answerable to people in the town or county government. I don't know.
In some places, they are answerable to the community, because in some places, unfortunately not in my county, library boards are elected. In other places, they are appointed
Well,
by the county board, so it varies.
But in
there
each,
is an
in each
accountability.
case, there are elected officials who are representing their constituents, who are influencing those decisions. And
That's not always true at school boards,
the
though.
farther,
Okay,
school
go
boards
ahead.
are elected officials, are they not?
No, they're not exactly. I mean, it's.
It varies. Some are
it-
appointed by
okay,
mayors.
as
Okay,
the
but then
Mayors
the
are
mayor-
elected
now-
officials, are they not?
Okay.
Again.
Okay, we're mincing words here. Okay,
No,
go
we're
ahead,
not
sir.
missing with this. Is a democratic process here in the United States. It's not like some dictator said, here's the school board you will have and impose from on high.
That actually did happen at our school.
Yeah.
Well, this is, the federal government
Who was
imposed.
the
It was a private
impositor?
school. We had no idea. We were told that parents were not allowed to know who was on the school board. We were not allowed to vote for anyone to be on the
Okay, so
school
it was a
board.
private school.
Yes, but I
Okay,
heard it.
that's a different, that's
I mean,
a
you wanted
different
one
animal
anecdotal
entirely.
story to make your
Yeah.
point, but now
No,
you don't
no.
get this one.
All right,
No, I'm-
there's a
I'm
lot of
interested in that
okay, we
situation.
have time for
It's-
one or two more questions, and we're having a lot of crosstalk. I'm going to get through and make sure everybody has a thing. And obviously, we're not going to come to a consensus here, but go ahead, sir.
We have a lot of discussion, debate in groups when some of these challenges to books come from the right. but especially here in Virginia, a lot of them don't come from the right. We've had several school districts pull the Diary of Anne Frank for, and I quote, Zionist propaganda. Meanwhile, we've had multiple school districts in the state that have begun ditching primary source documents, including like 12 Years a Slave, the speeches of Patrick Henry, Shakespeare, because it doesn't have proper LGBTQ representation. We have a pretty good infrastructure for guarding against challenges from the right, but when they come from the left, they burn through like a field pandemic.
Can you give me a source?
I mean, that one there is,
What?
I mean, the Anne Frank thing's happening in Fairfax County right now at 2 schools.
I haven't heard of that, and I've
Case in point. One gets national headlines, and the other has a couple parents groups and students like, wait, why are we pulling Anne Frank?
I haven't heard about that, and I've been researching it. I talked to a lot of librarians before I came to this thing. That's something I have not heard about. But yes,
Well,
sir.
you gave specific titles, so I'm
I'm
gonna take
also
them as
curious, I want to, since we're being specific, and it's been your thing to be specific, how
I just want to
do
be
you
precise in the
define,
language, because
how do you define the buying of books in a library, or, for example, I work in higher education, the higher education process, how do you define that just because it's the spending of public money? You define that as the use of force.
That's what taxation is.
Oh,
Taxation
okay.
is the use
No,
of
no,
force.
no, never mind. I've heard everything I need to hear about that. If you're one of those taxation is theft people, then we're just like not going to be able to
No, it's
meet
not
any kind
theft.
of like.
It
thing.
is the use of force when you compel someone to do something.
No,
There
it's,
is-
it's
but
a it's
may
a
I
public,
finish?
It's a public.
No, it
good.
is not. It is
You're not letting
spelled
anybody
out.
else finish, though.
No,
You've
and
been
you're not
finished.
asking
Go ahead.
questions.
Go ahead, sir.
It's a
Yeah.
public
Okay, I have a
good.
question. If a group of parents went to a library and said Bain books are too violent, we should remove all Bain books that we have already purchased from the library, would you be okay with that?
I would be unhappy with, but the question is, what is the process by
They
which
have every
they
right
go through?
to exercise the process in the way that anybody else does.
Yeah.
And if they want to, it goes back to, it's enshrined in the Bill of Rights, the petition for the redress of grievances. If they have a grievance, they want to petition their government to do this thing,
Yeah, it's the
they
whole thing of-
they can affect the buying decision or the presentation decision of the library in the same way anybody else can. What they can affect is our publishing decision. They cannot tell us what to publish, when to publish it. They cannot censor what we publish. That's the difference.
And taxation with representation. That's the whole thing to answer the issue earlier about when you compel people to give money, you at least have to have some sort of representative government to do it. We've had some discussions about whether the school board's appointed or elected, et cetera, but there is a general process. Private institutions, different matter, and we've had some conflicts about how schools operate privately from both the left and right situation in Fairfax County many times. So, but in terms of if you are using public funds, then there has to be some sort of representation that goes with that taxation. The better thing, the best thing of all is your local societies, the Rotary Club or whatever, who go out and get voluntary funds to buy books and stock libraries and things like that. That means those individuals are contributing willingly, and that's the best element of our society.
Every public library system, although it may differ and their policies may differ, for example, I know in Arlington County they won't purchase a book until multiple people request it, but every public library has somewhere on their site some system whereby you can say to that library, I would like you to buy this book.
Yes.
They might not, they have no obligation to say yes, and if you really want a book in the library, get some friends together, get a posse, have multiple people ask for it because they have limited funds. If they're buying physical books, they have limited shelf space. The nice thing about ebooks is that libraries don't have as much limited shelf space, and it's sometimes easier to get a library to purchase an ebook because it doesn't take up space. But if you want more queer YA books in your public library, ask your public library for them, and by doing that, also give a message that there are people in the community who want those books. It helps counter the people in the community who are not wanting those books.
And you can work with the
100%,
library by
that's a great idea.
donating the books. You do have to go to
Those,
the
go in
library.
the, those end up in the Friends of
No,
the
no, no.
Library sale every time.
No, well, they don't.
Yes, they do.
If you follow the procedure.
All right,
and
well, we're
speak
gonna
to the
end right
librarian,
here, because we can go
you
on for a
donate
couple
books to
hours.
them.
Yeah, we can.
Anybody wants to continue this, let's head over to the bar. But we gotta close out shop here. I want to thank you guys for attending. Thank you for this good conversation. We'll be up here, people taking questions personally as much as you like. Thank you very much.
Yay.
Please challenge every one of our books so that we can reap the rewards of negative publicity.
As I said, there is a reason.